if you will. Excellent. We're going to record this and then we post these, and we'll talk about that after Facebook posting the resources and what have you. So
yeah. Well, Joe's going to stick his head in here and say hi. I'm going to move that over. So everybody. Yeah.
Joe, introduce yourself real fast. We know Dan.
Hi, I'm Joe Bauer. I'm up here at Yuba College. I teach CAD, CNC machining, and manual machining. So,
yeah. So I can't help myself. I was busy doing SolidWorks during the introduction, so just gotta do what I gotta do, you know. Anyway, so we got a lot of stuff going on up here at Yuba College. Most of you guys probably already heard. We haven't shut down anything. We're still running our labs, classes. We had to migrate to an online component, and that's been pretty awesome. But one of the great things that we're announcing is a brand new certificate we just got back from the state. So I'm going to try to share my screen. I cannot share. So Jeff, are you hosting?
Yes.
So if you go down to your screen share and there's a little up arrow to the right, it says allow multiple people to share screens at once. I've learned all this stuff because a month ago, if you would ask me if you want to Zoom, I think you wanted to race for pinks or something. Of course, so I just dated. Go ahead.
I have it checked already.
So there I am. I got it.
Cool.
So yeah, I just dated myself because I said race for pinks the other day in class, and some student goes, "What's that?" I'm like, okay, yeah, all right. So anyway, so this is the brand new certificate we just got back from the state about 2 weeks ago.
I don't see your screen, Dan.
You don't
have to choose it.
I chose my screen, so I'm going to unshare. I'm going to stop.
No. It's under view options for everybody. They have to choose whose they want to look at.
Ah, yeah, I was going to say because I'm seeing my screen.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Got it.
Yep. You've learned something today.
Yeah. But it's
perfect then.
Purpose, right?
Yeah.
No charge for this call.
Okay, so I just got asked. I'm going to share my email again for in the chat, so it's taken up. I can't talk and type at the same time, so there we are. Thank you for bearing with me. So my email is there for everybody to see. So you guys see the new certificate that we're putting forward, right? The fabrication manufacturing method.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, good. I was just waiting for feedback. So basically what we have been looking at, we've been dealing a lot with the local community, a lot with the needs. We do a great job with the welding. We do a lot with machining. But what the industry is clamoring for is fabrication. So if you look at the form itself, I've highlighted the word fabrication. And they made a delineation between manufacturing and fabrication. And the #1 people that hire our students up here are the ag manufacturers, but there are so many different factions of their companies that they're doing. They're talking about the welding, the sheet metal, the plate, the CNC, but not just CNC machining, CNC plasma tables, CNC water jets, CNC lasers. And then they're also talking about CNC press brakes, automation. And so we went to the drawing board and said, what kind of add on to our degrees that we already have? We already have our welding degrees. We have our machining degrees. Is there a way that we could put a certificate out there that meets the needs of our community and also gives a student another addendum to their certificates they've already earned? So it's kind of like welding, now what? Is kind of what I described this degree as, or machining and. So when you put fabrication manufacturing together, the classes that you looked at the bottom, we kind of came up with a new sequence of courses. Some we already offer, but we developed a couple other courses. So in the industry, we looked at what welding they're doing. We already teach the shield metal arc welding, the flux core arc welding, and TIG welding, MIG welding, but we were trying to put together more of a production style fabrication manufacturing. So we put the applied fabrication structural design. The applied fabrication is the sheet metal aspect of it. How do you work with sheet metal, form sheet metal, bend sheet metal, the layout, the design, the fixturing, the tooling that uses with the sheet metal, structural design, fabrication. That's where you get into the plate. Basically, anything over 3/8 is what we're looking at there. So the 84 course is pretty much 1/4 inch and under, and then the 85 is where you get into a little bit heavier plate. How do you move it? Work holding. How do you hoist it? How do you not getting into driving a forklift? That was stepping on too many toes. So it's just basically how to deal with heavy things. And then the 88 course is where we actually will be taking in live work for the students to actually make. And with the manufacturing courses, I'll let Joe kind of talk about that when he brings it to the table.
Yeah, so kind of what we're looking at is breaking down the traditional silos and trying to cross-train. Modern employers are looking for, well, something random came through the door today. How are we going to make it? And you don't get to just be the welder anymore, or you don't get to just be the machinist anymore. So skill diversity. So principles of machine shop, manufacturing 20 is like a foundational course. If you look at our students, to my knowledge, no one even has a lathe in their shop anymore. So machine tool principles are lost on many of our students. So we talk about measuring tools.
At the educational level, the companies still have lathes.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, I'm talking high school students here, right? So machine tool technology is foreign to most students. So we bring them in and talk about all the principles of that. On CNC machining, so manufacturing 34 is where we bring students in, and same thing, foundational, ground level, no prior experience needed. The thing is, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, trying to climb the learning curve with some of this technology. So that's where manufacturing 35 comes in. That's a second semester. 34 feeds into 35, where students will get into the principles of G-code, all the different work holding. We'll talk about 3-axis into 4 and 5. So part complexity, especially if you're having to, try to make a casting into a billet part or some of these more organic shapes. We identified that we needed a little bit more time on the CNC side. And then just like on Dan's side of the house, manufacturing 60 is a problem-solving class where we're going to basically give you scenarios or hopefully some real-world examples and case studies, trying to bring real projects in from the local community to have students working as close to reality as we can get. Draft 20, blueprint and specifications reading, that's where we get in there and they're working out of a textbook and on CAD software, realizing that we're not T-square and French curve anymore. Most everything is either going to be plasma or CNC machined. And how do I go from a napkin sketch to that finished product? So dealing with GD&T and dimensioning and going through and turn those into CAD models on something you can go ahead and make.
So we had a question from Alicia about they're investing in lathes at the high school. And are you talking CNC turning or manual turning? That was on the chat function. I wanted to answer that question. The high schools, are you investing in the manuals? Let's see. There are many employers. What's good? Yes.
So I'd say if there's one thing I can say about this is it's very geographical. Up here in our area, there are tons of employers that have manual lathes. I've talked with other folks in other parts of the country, and they say, no, it's not even worth our time. So in our area, yes, absolutely. Manual lathe skills are super important, as well as CNC turning as well.
So the question was manual. CNC is where you design the parts. You either program the G-code manually or you run it through a G-code converter or apply tool paths in a program such as Fusion. The manual machining is where you have to actually turn, the knob turners, I guess is a slang term. The manual lathes have no computer assistance. So you actually have to adjust the knobs. You have to do the math on it. You have to, all the dials you have to turn yourself. So if you're turning to radius or turning diameter, you have to basically, we still have a whiteboard right next to the lathe where they sit there and do the math on it. And then they learn how many thousands to take off depending on what they're turning down. The big push right now in most educational arenas is the CNC aspect of machining. And that's just for high production, because once you get a proof of concept, you get a part that meets the minimum quality and tolerance necessary. You can make those parts. You program out for tool wear, but the manual machining is still necessary, because if you have that one part, like last night, we actually had a spindle off of what was it, a 64, 65 Ford?
It was a Ford tractor.
Yeah, it's early 60s. And the guy came in and said, "Hey, can you fix this?" And we did. It was just, it's not something that you would take the time to build all the fixtures for a CNC a mill. We would end up with a vertical mill, or figure out how to put it in a chuck or build the tooling to hold it, because it's a very obscure shape, where we could just take it in the manual shop. And we did, and we turned it, and it worked out just fine, because you're not doing 1,000 or you're not doing 500. It's just that was a one-off part that we had to figure out how to do, and it was a lot easier to do it with the manual because you're in control of everything. Would you agree, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what we're trying to get at here. Is there's 1,000 different ways to do anything, but on the manual side, when it comes to one-offs or to maintenance and repair, a lot of the times you could have manually made something before you were even done setting up your CNC machine. So it's letting the students identify, there's probably 5 different ways I can do this, but what's most efficient? So it just gives them another skill set that they can identify, what is the best process.
Right. And the chat's going is very, very apropos. Somebody that turns the knobs can feel the metal turning. They could smell it. They could hear it. And it's a lot easier sometimes to stop on a manual. If something goes wrong, you hear it and you can stop it. And it's not as expensive as ruining. Let's say you have the UMC 750, which is a couple $100,000, and it makes a loud noise. And sometimes that's too expensive, and your maintenance budget isn't enough to cover it. So, and there's something to be said for somebody that understands the machining process. And so the manual machine is a very large part of our program. And that's why it's part of this certificate to go along with fabrication. So what we're finding with students is when they're coming out is we try to take them out to shops. We try to get industry to come in, but their knowledge of how to put things together, how to design for manufacturability, how to lay out for maximum use of materials. What does the material cost? How do you build per hours? These are all built into here. So when a student comes out, they understand the process of design to building. Now the Weld 88 and the Manufacturing 60 course we're trying to build up enough of a student body to where we could actually have those 2 classes working in tandem and we're trying to come up with a set of projects where they actually have to go to the machine shop. They have to come in the fabrication shop. And they have to work in both, and they could work in teams, and that way they could do multiple processes on one fabrication, manufacturing, and machining, welding. They could put it all together into a certain set of projects. And everybody goes, "Why don't we build a Baja car?" And I'm like, that would be nice, but I don't think that's going to be the answer yet.
I see someone in the chat there mentioned engineering. That's another thing as well. We have students who are interested in transferring and pursuing engineering, and this is just one more certificate that they might be able to pick up, kind of on that journey as they're working through their courses. Definitely a lot more accessible and definitely at a better price point up here at the community college. Design for manufacturability is something that we focus a lot on. particularly on the mechanical side of the house. You can have the greatest CAD design in the world, but when you get that quote back and you're wondering, why is this so expensive, right? The drill bits are round, and all those square holes can add up if you're in too thick a material. Classic example there, but
Well, it's one of the sayings we have around here is paper's never rejected ink. And just because you could draw it doesn't mean we're going to build it.
Right.
One of my favorite cartoons is an engineer lamenting because a welder built it just like they designed it. And it's the end game in this is exposing as many people as we can to the design, assembly, manufacturing process, so they can kind of put the tools together in their mind. They could see an end product, and then hopefully explain why did we do it this way. Somebody mentioned maintenance. We are putting that through right now, and that should be out in a couple months as a industrial maintenance mechanic, where we get into the PLCs. It's a lot like the mechatronics that Sierra already does, but it's different because it's we're looking more at the supply line maintenance, PLCs, electronics. How do you get a product from point A to point B? Manufacturing centers,
distribution centers, like we say. A lot of this depends regionally, where we have a lot of agriculture in our area. I'm sure some of you folks do as well. We talked about breaking down those silos, not just being a welder, not just being a machinist. If something breaks in your distribution center and it's a conveyor system or an expensive piece of equipment, you might be a week before you can get that spare part sent to you, or maybe they don't make it anymore. So giving students the ability to take some measurements because they know measuring tools, go into a CAD system, or heck, even just jot down a quick hand sketch and then go over to the manual mill or over to their CNC machine and crank out a temporary part until the new one can get shipped out. So that's kind of where we're trying to come at it from.
And Mark made a good point. He's a mechanical engineer. We always say a mechanical engineer that could build his own parts or her own parts or their own parts is almost unstoppable, because that's ingrained in their mind already of, I need to design this to do a job, but these are the constraints of the equipment I have. So a person that could, a mechanical engineer especially, that could run the equipment, that could build, assemble, the mindset's different than, somebody comes up and says, well, all your experience in the world doesn't prove the fact that what it says in the book is wrong. So this is our stab. It might evolve over time, but this is like Joe mentioned earlier, the one trick pony, or is losing headway to somebody that comes out and has these abilities. My own daughter is a classic example. She did ME up at Reno, and because she'd taken the machine shop classes, she got hired at a pretty big company up there just to work on their supply line. Then she got pulled up into the engineering department in one semester, just because she could run the CNC equipment. She understood the process of, and so it's very important for students that are looking to go into this industry to have experience, to have a mindset of assembly of a product at the end. Welding's taught 4 inches at a time in a booth, but it's applied in so many different ways. I know some people do 6-inch or 8-inch coupons, I just saying. And then machining's taught turning the turning diameters and radiuses. Everybody made their own little, what do you call those? The plugs. Turn this to 1/2 inch. Turn this to 5/8. Turn this to within a couple of thousandths tolerance. And that's how you teach the machining. But how do you apply it? Where do you apply it? That's what we're going for with this new certificate.
Say, Dan,
Yes, sir.
You've done a great job, and I'm really excited about seeing this new certificate and how it's going to help your students as well as the local workforce. Does anybody have any questions for Dan and Joe right now? We need to keep moving on, but
I get paid to talk, so you guys go ahead.
Anybody got any questions? Because I know Faith wants to do her presentation as well.
And she's going to do a much better job, so you look forward to that.
No. These are all outstanding.
Yeah, this is great stuff. This is Lance Gunnarsson. I just joined. It's the kind of direction that the high school I work at, El Dorado High School, has been taking with its metal manufacturing. So it's good to see that you're doing kind of the same thing we've been thinking about and are beginning to develop at our school.
There's another reason we did this, because the high schools are doing such a good job of teaching the welding aspect. They're doing the good job about teaching a lot. So why would they come to a community college if they already have the skills that a community college teaches? Well, this adds on to what they've already done and allows them so that if they already have the welding skills, they already have some of the machining skills, they can actually start a little bit and get through their educational goals a little bit faster. So what's up?
What school are you at, Dan? I'd like to send some students your way.
Yeah, Yuba College. We're about 38 miles north of Sacramento, right up Highway 65. 65 from Roseville. We're 15 minutes from Lincoln.
Okay.
Outstanding. So Dan, thank you so much, and Joe.
Well, let us know. I entered my email into the chat earlier, so if anybody needs any help or anything we can do, please, by all means, let us know. But thank you guys so much.
Perfect. So let's transition now to Faith from Cordova.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay. And then Faith, if you can figure out how to share your screen, I think you're able to. Oh, Dan, you look good.
I will do that.
There you go.
It's my Corona do. All right, we have to hop to a different call here coming in. So I'm going to jump out of this meeting. Pleasure meeting y'all, and hopefully talk to y'all later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. So Faith, introduce yourself, your program. And the reason I invited Faith to talk is she basically has this distance learning thing down, according to herself. And she answered my questions. And I'd really like to hear about how you're doing it day by day, by the week, how you're engaging students, and what your forward thinking is for the future.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I was an engineer at HP, and I have a degree in industrial and manufacturing engineering. And I've been teaching for 10 years. Half of that was math. And so about 5 years ago, I met Steve. He was with Crane at that point, just about to retire. And I remember just crying to him about not understanding what I was doing and needing a lot of support. And so now I think I've kind of figured things out. In the last 4 years, I've rewritten all of my courses to be in the product innovation and design pathway. And it was a big shock to have the distance learning happen, because now everything we had planned and dialed in was all just mixed up, I guess. So I'll show you what I've done for this semester. And Steve asked me what's your plan for next fall, and I say just have school back, but I know that I'll probably need a contingency plan for that. So I'll go right into my agenda. So just the transition is the first, and then I'll talk about how I connect with students, some of my lessons, and then I have 2 students here right now. Leo and Will are going to talk about their experiences in distance learning. I'll go into accountability and how I'm keeping students accountable, and then what my plans are for next year. And anytime anybody has questions, just let me know. So I really do feel like this whole situation was like going through the stages of grief. Like the day we learned that we were leaving school, it was just like, you have 10 minutes in your classroom, now go, you know, and you're scared for your family, you're scared for your students. And so it took a while to kind of get to a point where I was able to think of the future. Everything I had planned wasn't going to happen. So now what, you know? None of my students can access our 3D printers or laser cutter. We had all these, like the best competitions of the year happen at the end of the year. So all of those things were not going to happen. So just the sadness for my kids and myself that we weren't going to participate in those was trying. So I came to now we're implementing, and I feel like we've come up with some fun things that they're doing, and there's some participation, not as much as I'd like, but pretty good participation. So for connecting with students, I do offer office hours, but really office hours are pretty much all the time. Like whenever they need to get in touch with me, they use their preferred method. I offer Remind. I also have a Google Voice phone number, which is cool because it hides your phone number. So you can connect with parents without sharing your own personal phone number. I have email, messaging, and Zooms. At first, I didn't have a weekly Zoom with my students, but I felt I needed that for myself to feel like I still was teaching kids. So I like to see their faces and hear their voices and know what's happening in their lives. So that's why I kind of kept that going. So normally we use Inventor, which is my preferred modeling software, but that is not something that we can load onto the Chromebooks most students have, because a lot of our students don't have their own computer. So I taught myself Tinkercad. So that was one of my substitutions, I guess. I like it because I was able to create a classroom and manage my students in it. It isn't as good as other softwares like Fusion or Inventor or SolidWorks, but it does have some, they're able to still kind of keep moving with designing things, even if they don't have their nice computer at school. And so I started with like this Lego guy, which is kind of an intermediate modeling activity. And then I had them creatively change it into a superhero because I'm just trying to make it engaging still. Does anybody have questions on that? Next year, if I could get a software loaded on the Chromebooks, I would for my students. I also know that there is a web-based version of Fusion 360 I might try, but I don't know how that works yet. So that might be like next year's thing.
I have a question, Faye.
Uh-huh.
Are you offering an alternative assignment for students that do not have access to computers?
So all of our students were offered Chromebooks. So that
Okay.
was the nice, if I did not have computers, it would have been a lot less engaging for them, I think, because everything we do really is modeling and code based. I could have probably found some kind of worksheet type things, but I just feel like it wouldn't have been as impactful for them. So yeah, thankfully our district offered it. We're able to get them Chromebooks. The problem with that though is they can't load software onto the Chromebooks. So I have to pick web-based only, I have to offer web-based only software. So they can't, yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
Oh, I had a thought, Faith.
Uh-huh.
You know, on one of these things that Steve had recently,
Sorry, I don't know how to stop this without it.
there are a couple Autodesk guys here, and they said Fusion 360 is not actually going web-based ever.
Yeah, see, I was just looking like for next year, and I saw just a list of all these different modeling programs you could use, and like from 2017 it said there's some web-based thing. So I really haven't looked into it yet, but I'm hoping to find something a little more advanced than Tinkercad that they can have a web-based solution for, because it isn't as user-friendly and as I would like it to be. You know, it's pretty basic.
There's a couple, somebody already mentioned in the chat that Onshape, which is a Creo, it's a PTC product, which is Creo, which used to be Pro Engineer. There's that one.
That's what I learned in college.
Yeah. Fusion, we've been working to do a virtual machine so that students could get access from a Chromebook using a virtual machine. And I can send you more information on that. We're trying to do that in the Bay Area. You're welcome to take a look at it to see if it works. And then we're trying to expand that to other software as well.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
So Faith, John Zay here, Sacramento City College. There's a program that we just started up called VDI, Virtual Desktop, and I don't know what the I stands for. But what it allows you to do is you can use a Chromebook and actually access a server on campus. And we're going to use that for some of our programs, our CAD programs. So
okay.
So
would I work with my IT people in the district to set up kind of a server potentially?
Yeah, he'd have to. Yeah. And it's basically because we're using Visio in one of the classes. So obviously that's something that you can't use on Chromebook, but the students will be able to use Chromebook to access the Visio program, but they're actually accessing a server on campus, and everything's going to be on campus.
Okay.
As far as the programs go, yeah, it's actually it's pretty cool.
Yeah, because there's a lot of softwares that, like, my IT guy laughs at me about my image. He's like, you need to cut this down, because I just always like trying new things, you know, and I have a hard time letting go of things. So it'd be fun to have like image that they could access on the server. So
Right, right. Yeah. And they could always your IT people could contact our IT people at Los Rios or at Sacramento City College.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So 3D modeling, because again, in my classroom, we do 3D modeling, we do laser cutting, which is not going to happen right now. And then we also do basically any electronics you could want, I have available in my room on a small electronics. So for coding, we had a bunch of coding stuff planned, but I got into code.org, which I hadn't really used much before. And I found Intro to App Lab. And I've never written apps with students before. And this tutorial steps you through one lesson at a time with like this block coding, but behind it, you can view the JavaScript behind it. And every student at all levels, I mean, except for this one kid, I don't know, just kidding. So all students, if they got into it, they were able to step through this on their own without my support, right? Like I was willing to go. And the good part is if they did get stuck on something, I could log into their account through code.org and see, you know, what step they were struggling with. So I really liked that. And it seamlessly, like you just added, I logged in with Google and they knew I was a teacher. And so it automatically loaded my classes for me. I didn't have to do any work to do that. So it was really great. So I will definitely use this more. I know there's more code classes that other than Intro to App Lab and App Lab. It's just that they didn't seem as fun and easy. And those were like my two requirements right now, is that it has to be like the most engaging thing I could find, and they could be independent with it. So did somebody have a chat for me? I don't know how to do my chat from this. Or is it just, sorry, I'll see.
No, we're fine.
Okay. Does anybody have questions on that? Okay. So their first app was just basically using the skills you've made, make an app. So I have some different apps here. I'll just show you one. Let's see if I can go to it. I think it'll just go straight over. And so the cool part is they create the app, they share the link, and they can share it on cell phones, and they can share it just to me like for a web part. So you pick the button and you, and it gives you an answer at the end. All right. So it's just kind of fun. And I allowed them as a discussion to share their apps with one another and give each other peer feedback. So that was kind of like my first attempt. And I saw a lot of kids after the discussion was created do the app because they didn't do it already. And so then they said, oh, well, that looks easy. And like that kid can do it. And, you know, or they also kind of felt some peer pressure, like, oh, like that was a really good app. Like I need to make a good, you know. So then the second week of this project, I had them create, I created like a problem-based lesson on COVID-19. So solve a problem that was created by COVID-19. So this one was just like linking to all these different resources related to COVID-19 information. This one was like a workout app, and then this one was a game. So just for like the boredom stuff. So I liked that they were able to kind of take these skills and then apply them in a different way with that. So, and if you want the links to these, they're quite entertaining. My kids played this TP Mania for hours. After I did 3D modeling and apps, then we got into some career stuff. And I hadn't really I'd used like little things off of California Career Zone, but not extensively. And I found that I could actually load all of my students into this also, and then manage their interaction with it. So I found that really helpful. One of the things that was kind of annoying for me was that sometimes it would say the student hadn't done an assignment and they had. So the reporting is kind of off in it. But I found a lot of cool interest profiles. You can create a resume in it. You can do budgeting, you know, all those different things. So I really liked it. It's really good for high school kids. So any questions on that? Okay, so I have Will and Leo on the phone or on the call. You guys want to say?
I will. Leo.
Hello.
So do you guys want to share pros or cons first? So I was going to have them go through the pros and cons of distance learning from a student perspective. So I guess we could start with pros. Any pros at all for you guys? I know it's been hard.
Yeah, I'd say like what you were doing, the assignments that you were posting, despite us not being able to be in the classroom and doing like hands-on activities and preparing for like those competitions that we were supposed to do. I think the activities were pretty engaging and rewarding at the same time. Like the last assignment, us creating a LinkedIn profile and starting to make connections was like a huge thing, because obviously we're going to need to be able to do that and be more engaged with other people as we like move on, especially for me in like our class, since I'm in the senior class. It's good since I'm going off to college soon, and I can use it even after that.
Thanks, Leo.
Mm-hmm.
Will, what did you want to add to that for pros for you?
Yeah, just I really like the ability to be able to manage time efficiently. So like I can, if I finish assignments in other classes, I can choose to spend it in like whatever way I want, which it allows, like, instead of having limited to just 45 minutes on engineering, I could spend like 3 hours. Like that's what I did for the code.org app. I could just sit down and just code for hours if I wanted to, which I think that's a pro that we don't get in a normal classroom setting where we have to put away the computers and move on to our next class.
Mm-hmm.
I second that.
Cool. And it's kind of similar to what you're going to experience in college, right, Leo?
Yeah.
You're going to have more time on fewer classes. So
yeah, for sure.
What about cons? Leo, what were your cons?
For distance learning in general, or just this
Just in
class?
general. Yeah, you don't have to just speak to my class, just in general.
I think for this class, it's been fine. There aren't really any cons, I don't think. But in general, I think there's definitely like a learning curve to distance learning, because it's well, a lot different, obviously. I just finished the AP exam today, a few hours ago, and learning that last section of math was a lot more difficult online than it was compared to the classroom setting. So I think it definitely has cons. Getting visuals and learning through that method is a lot more difficult, because teachers aren't always going to have like the technology or like maybe like the time to make that for their students, because in the classroom they could just do it easily during each class. And I guess some of the assignments that teachers make, some of them are a lot different from what you'd expect. For example, my Spanish class, since we're doing distance learning, we can't really set meetings and speak Spanish in like a formal setting and practice our communication skills. So we're doing like more art-based projects, which I feel isn't really gonna help us prepare for using Spanish in the real world. And it just doesn't fit sometimes. So.
Thank you.
Can I ask Leo a question?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Hi, Leo. This is Todd Wold. I am the director of CTE and Adult Ed in Tahoe Truck Unified, and I taught math, physics, chemistry, and AP Computer Science, Engineering, and Architecture for 24 years.
Oh, wow.
So my question for you is this. You said for the math part, it was more difficult. Was there any opportunities for you to do any one-on-one tutoring or live office hours where you could ask questions and go through it with your teacher, or was it all kind of asynchronously done online?
There were those opportunities. He had hours where we could request a one-on-one or maybe a group with him for a meeting just to go over some of the concepts that we weren't quite strong with. But I think part of the harder part compared to the classroom setting is the engagement with other students. So when you're learning new concepts, for me at least, it's a little easier to learn when I have other people that are we're kind of like putting together a puzzle and trying to learn it all together. And I feel like the distance learning doesn't have that as much.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't have graduated from high school if it wasn't for two of my best friends being in the same math, physics, and chemistry classes so that we could help each other figure stuff out. Can you think of any kind of an online environment that would have been able to do that? Or do you think only face-to-face with your buddies in the same room would have worked for you?
I think, okay, so I know another school, I forgot what it was called, but their school actually did distance learning by recreating the schedule of their before quarantine classes. So they would have classes at 8 to 9 and then 9 to 10 or however it went. And they would those would be Zoom meetings and it would just be the class and it ran almost exactly how it did before. I think that would be one way to do it because you'd be with those classmates again and you're all together learning at the same time. But then that also kind of defeats the purpose of being able to manage your time more and spending time on subjects like Will had said.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So may I ask a question?
Yep.
Hi. Will, I believe it is. You just spoke?
It was Leo.
Leo, I'm sorry. So in the beginning, you guys did some Zoom meetings where was all the class participating in those meetings?
For which class?
Any class.
No, I think actually at the very beginning it was kind of slow and then it all the teachers started getting into the distance learning. So the only classes I really had regular Zoom meetings with, or at least at some point, was engineering, math, and leadership class. But other than that, my classes like history, Spanish, English, I really got no engagement with those teachers.
So would that be a preference where you would have scheduled times where you would participate in class in a classroom setting, not on campus but through Zoom? Would that be something that would be appealing to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some of the classes that aren't doing the Zoom meetings, it works out because they're not really as engaging as they would be. Either way, they wouldn't be as engaging. I definitely think that having those Zoom meetings maybe once every other day or, twice a week or something, once a week, it would be better than having like zero engagement.
Right. And I asked the question because, well, we found out yesterday, and I'm with Sacramento City College, that all the colleges in Sacramento were going 100% online in the fall. Okay. So, and then to do that, we have a choice. Do we just do, we could do scheduled Zoom meetings or just have pre-recorded videos of the class lecture. And I was just curious from both of your perspectives, which one you would prefer.
I think I would like the idea of having those scheduled times like that other school was doing, but I also would want to back it up with having recorded meetings so that students that can't make the meetings, can always watch what they're missing later and still can manage their time as they wish. And if they need to ask questions or anything like that, they can set up those one-on-one sessions like outside of that schedule, and maybe not have that schedule every day of like 1 through 7 classes, but maybe 3 times a week.
Well, but then again, Leo, when you go to college, you don't go 5 days a week for 8 hours a day.
Right.
You might only have a class 1 or 2 times a week for a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of downtime between classes.
Yeah.
A little bit different than the structure of high school.
Mrs. Caplin, do you have more things you want to share with us?
I was going to ask Will for his cons, and then I had 2 more things. So Will, did you want to say your cons for distance learning before we?
Yeah, just I think I have like 2 pretty big cons, and one of them is just the inability to do projects like in science or engineering, like not being able to do labs, or I'm in band, not being able to get together to play instruments is definitely a big con to being at home.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one would be even if we can still talk like right now in like Zoom or talk on the phone or whatever, it's still not the same as getting that like in-person speaking and doing things together as a group. And so sometimes it can feel, I might be in a Zoom meeting in my English class, but everyone's muted and everyone has their video off. So it's really just me watching my teacher give a lesson, and it's not as engaging as in a normal class setting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions before I move on?
I just want to thank both of you, Will and Leo, for coming on. Thank you very much, and for your insights.
Yes. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Mrs. Caplin, take us to the end.
Yep. You guys did awesome. Thanks. So just to hold students accountable, it's really difficult. Our district moved to credit, no mark. So at this point, a lot of students are making that determination. And even at the beginning of the semester, I'm at about 50 to 60% participation. So it's been a lot of work to get people to engage for various reasons. So I do multiple things. I send emails to students and parents. I use Google Voice to call parents. One thing that I didn't want to happen is I didn't want like halfway through distance learning a parent or a student being like, what did we miss? What did I miss? I just knew that would happen. And then I would have to keep repeating myself of what we had done. So I created this document, which is like my saving grace. And so basically every time I connect with a parent or a student that's been disengaged, I have this document that all of these links go straight to the assignment wherever it is. And then I also say, because I keep, one of the things, we switched to Schoology from Google Classroom, which was kind of hard for students. So I put how they submit the work and then what it's worth. So then they can go into their gradebook and they can look at the title and then the score, and they should see a score there. Otherwise they didn't do it. So, and then like when parents say, oh, my kid did it, I say, well, it would say a score, because I've been updating it every like 2 days a week. So if there's no score, then they didn't submit it correctly or they didn't do it. So that's been helpful for me. And I know that kids are using it because they'll be like, oh, this due date doesn't match the one on Schoology. I'll be like, oh, okay. So I'm like, oh, at least I know people are using it. So the other thing I was worried about is that since we switched to Schoology, some students may not know how to use Schoology. So it was a way that they could directly link into it. And I just emailed it to them so they could just use this document as like the plan for the semester, basically, or the distance learning. So for next year, I'm just working on trying to create relevant. So I think the most important thing for students that I feel is that it has to be relevant. So that they have to know that it's going to mean something. And we're not just like doing it because we needed to think of something. But, you know, it's like when you're in those stages of grief, right? And you're shocked and you're like depressed and sad about all the things you're missing. It's like, now what are we going to do? So I really tried to find things that are relevant and fun. I attach a video to every assignment I get. Well, most assignments, especially the ones I know that'll be confusing, to give instructions on how to do it and how to submit it. For next year, I'm hoping that I can create kits of hardware, whether it be microcontrollers, electronics, or just like fun building challenge things occasionally. Because otherwise, like Will was saying, like just doing these things on the computer is just not, it's not the same. I like having weekly Zoom calls because I feel like as a teacher, you start losing your teaching, feeling like you're a teacher when you're just sending stuff out virtually and just grading all the time. Like those are my least favorite things about teaching, like grading. It's like being with students, and prep is my favorite. So I get to see their faces, even if it's only like in our calls, it's a small group. It's usually like a third of the class. But at least I get to see some of them, and it's usually different kids every time. So I'm going to keep looking for web-based tech sites. So that's something that I'd like to know about, if there's sites that are completely web-based, or I'll look into that server at the school situation so that they can access real software that's valuable and relevant. And then just having lots of real world problems for them to solve. So like for the apps, I thought COVID-19 was good, but I think they're going to be tired of talking about that problem and hearing about that problem. So finding other problems that they can solve with the tools I have. So that's all I have. Are there any other questions?
Great job.
Thank you.
Faith, do you think you might be putting together kits for your students?
Yeah, so like next school year, if we're still 100% distance learning, then I would make like gallon bags of stuff to give to them and hand it out at some point. Just like if you check out books, you know?
And then you'll make them accountable for turning them back in?
Yeah, I would do it like books. Like, I mean, if it's something low cost, like paper and stuff, it's not going to matter. But if I'm giving them an Arduino, you know, I would want it back. So unless I could get a company to donate a bunch of microbits or something to my kids, which might happen.
Okay.
We'll
Any
see.
other questions for Faith? Faith, this is outstanding. Thank you for taking us through.
Hey, thank you. This is Aaron Boyd. I was wondering if you could share your presentation with us.
Yes, I will. Let me see. I'll find.
You want to send it to me, Faith, and then I can distribute it out?
I know that the Google Slides are like district only, so I can convert it to like a PDF or something. And all of this stuff has links to the different. So you can click on the different, all my students' apps and everything, and get the links.
All hyperlink. Okay.
It's all hyperlinked, yeah. So.
Yeah, so I can send this out. Plus, we'll also post it on the website. We've been posting everything on the Edu2Mfg.org, and we've been updating other resources on that on a regular basis. We're almost out of time. I was going to use that as a filler today to talk about some of the things that have been posted recently and some more things to be posted. But maybe we'll do more of that next week. So to be respectful of everyone's time, we're almost to the bottom of the hour. Any other thoughts, anything you'd like to see us talk about next week, next Tuesday? And in the chat, I posted something that came across my screen from Mark Martin about Tooling U has 90 days free access to over 500 different manufacturing related online courses. You may want to just check that out too. If you scroll through the Zoom chat box, it's about a few minutes back up. Well, if I hear no further thoughts,
Steve,
go ahead.
Yeah, could you put down that at the web address for the your web page for it's E2Manufacturing.org.
EDU, I just put it in the chat.
Okay.
EU2manufacturing.org. And when you go to that site, you can look at basically go to news, and I believe under news is where you can find the most recent stuff that's posted. That's where we're posting these Zoom calls or these shop talk calls, and then also look under resources on the tabs on the top and pull down. And we're trying to post everything there to make it accessible for everyone. As long as we keep sharing, I think this is a good thing. Any other thoughts?
Hey, Steve, this is Roy Ingram at Sierra College.
Hey, Roy.
To hear from Faith and her students, thanks for doing that. I know that was probably a challenge for them, and it seemed like they enjoy challenges. So I'm also curious, as the students that aren't doing well, a lot of times we don't even hear from them, just probably in our college, the same way you might hear in high school, is you're constantly trying to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard feedback from any of them on what can be improved to reach them as far as for the equity's sake and make it more accessible for them?
I think it really is a case-by-case basis. Like we've got a very diverse school, and so it's the language barrier, and then some of them like have IEPs, and they really thrive with constant reminders of things. And I have one student that for the past 3 weeks, he and his dad have been asking him to do work, and I've received 2 assignments. And I know in class it would be a struggle also, but it's like that there's just some, so that's those cases. And then there's other cases of students where their family situation is limiting their abilities, like they're babysitting siblings, they only have one, like limited internet. One of my students said that their brothers were taking finals, and so he couldn't work all week on the computer. And then there's other kids that now that grades haven't been very clear, and so I think that has been hard. So then since they're not being graded, they're not. So I think starting a year of this, like this is the new thing, like next fall, I think it's going to be easier, because then we'll have the expectations laid out of like free, scheduled meetings with your teachers. And then like, when are we gonna, like, I think having a schedule for students is going to be really helpful. And also having the grading clear and the attendance expectations, like there was never a mandate that they had to come to class. So I think if we had all those things in place, it'll be better. We aren't going to get everybody, but more,
Yeah, that makes sense. And the reason why I ask is, obviously you all hand off your students to us, and I just see there's some students that I see they log in, and then I try ask questions, and there's never the responses in the class from them. And then I privately message them in the class trying to see if they're even around. And it's interesting to see, okay, there might be some people that are trying to show their presence, but then not actually being there. And it's reflected in their work, obviously, but in this sort of gap we have right here that we created with the lockdown and this social distancing, and now we are trying to see what's going to happen with that gap in education, because obviously everybody took a hit from grammar school all the way up through higher education. So I just wanted to see what's happening there at high school level. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't have any perfect answers on that, sadly, but I think next year, if we had to do this, it would be better, because we would know what to do more, and the kids would know what to, like everyone would be more used to it. I think the shock of everything has made this transition much harder. So, yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. Let's get together again next week and continue this discussion. This has been great. And Faith, thanks you so much. Great time.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone stay well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Did you want me to stay on, Neil?
Steve,
I was trying to remember what I was going to ask you is, as I'm teaching a